Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Okay, so this is our attempt at recording week 1. We can't get anything else to work, so this is what we're doing, and we'll figure something out better for next week, hopefully. Okay, so I'll start. So I listed a few of my experiences with ELLs, the first being as like a pre-service teacher, so I've worked with them in a few of my practicums, probably the most of which in a literacy practicum, working with a student whose family originated from India, and then students working in science who are native Spanish speakers. So those experiences were interesting. They were kind of unique to each other. Like the one just working with one student was, much more hands-on, while the other one was trying to balance differentiation. And then I have as a mentor working with Nooksack and Blaine students through Compass to Campus, which I noticed that we all did that at one point. And then as a volunteer, I spent time in Haiti working with students who speak Creole, and trying to communicate with them in English and in Creole and French, because that's where my background is. And so it was kind of tricky, but also it's easy to find ways to communicate with each other that don't involve, correct grammar and words, which was fun.
So, did the student who spoke Punjabi, did he have like a silent period where he just didn't want to speak English at first, or did he come in with a lot of confidence? How was his introduction to English, I guess you could say?
I think being a student, he moved here early on, so he spent like kindergarten and first grade in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made it a little bit easier for him to make the transition because he was learning English along with learning his first language, which is spoken out. He didn't realize it was Punjabi. He just called it Indian. That's what he told me he spoke on day 1. I was like, there's like 30 languages spoken in India. He doesn't really tell me much. But I don't think so. He was a pretty confident kid in his English. His social language was really well developed by first grade, which was awesome. It was kind of his academic language that was lacking a little bit, which is to be expected with a lot of English language learners. So I would say if he did, I probably wasn't there for it. And by the time I got to him, he was pretty confident with his English and talking to me and like communicating back and forth.
Cool.
And then I know you said that your background is in French. Do you speak French, or are you just studying French?
I studied French in high school and then another year, so 5 years. I don't remember much, which is kind of a bummer. But when I was in Haiti, that made it a little easier because the Creole is a mix of African languages and French. So it was a little bit easier to kind of gain the language, and most people would speak French back to me. At the time, I was a lot more fluent than I am right now. But so it made it a little bit easier. I'm a little nervous for Spanish in Mexico.
Join the club. Cool. Oops. Uh-oh. One. Okay, so sorry, I lost my... All right. Okay, so some of the experiences, I haven't had too many experiences with ELL students, but one of the experiences that I had was being in an ELL class at Wazoo, and what they did was, instead of us we were kind of the role as the ELL student, so what they would do is they had a professor come in speaking Chinese, and we had to try and figure out what she was saying with that, and we had the advantage of being able to collaborate in English together, which is very different, obviously, as an ELL student without having someone speaking the same language. But it was a really interesting experience because it was very confusing and very frustrating to only be able to go off of hand gestures and yeah, so it was definitely a frustrating feeling, but it was really interesting to learn that. And then I also had the experience of being able to work with a young Russian boy. I was adopted from Russia when I was 18 months old, and so I only know a little bit of Russian. And what he did was he spoke Russian to his mom all the time, but one day, you know, it was hard for us to connect right off the bat. So I was standing behind him and I said something in Russian, and it actually scared him so bad. He just freaked out, and yeah, it really startled him because he wasn't expecting it. And after that, I instantly thought, oh, well, maybe we'll have a good connection after this, and he'll want to speak Russian with me all the time. And it was really almost the exact opposite, where he didn't necessarily want to open up that much. And that was a really big moment for me because it was very unexpected. But once we built more of a relationship, we learned how to work together. And he wants to teach me Russian all the time now. So it was cool. Yeah.
Thanks. So I know when I took a special education course through Western, my special education teacher did the same thing, where she came in and she spoke French. She's fluent in, and so she spoke that to us for an entire class period and tried to get us to do this like introduction activity, even though we had no idea what was going on. So I guess for me, doing that, it kind of put the perspective on like a brand new student coming into a classroom and trying to listen to us. And so I guess the question is, like, did that, you know, in any way impact like your view on ELL students and maybe what they're experiencing, and then like how you can change your techniques to help them?
Yeah, totally.
You adopted from Russia. That's really crazy.
Do you say creepy or crazy?
Crazy.
Oh.
Crazy.
Sorry, it like cut in and out on the speaker.
Crazy cool.
Thanks.
Oh my goodness. Do you like your like family or anything speak any Russian at all besides?
No, my parents moved here, but they're not Russian like at all. They were just like, I want a Russian baby, so they got a Russian kid.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you wish you still spoke Russian?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Especially with the huge Russian population in Washington with Microsoft and stuff. Like, I totally wish I could. But it's interesting, though, because there's a lot of Russian words that, you know, if you don't have that Russian background, you can't pronounce the words. So there's some words that I can say that most people can't say, which is interesting. But I would love to learn, but I don't think I ever could now.
Maybe.
Maybe. One day.
Maybe one day.
Okay, well, so I didn't really even mention this in my post because I kind of forgot about it. But my mom's first language is Spanish, and so like she's in ELL, and I like always kind of forget about that. But so she still speaks Spanish quite a bit because all of her family lives in Panama, and so I've just kind of learned a lot from visiting my family, and like it's my grandma and my aunts, my cousins, my uncles, and I see them maybe once every 2 years, and so just hanging out with them is like a challenge sometimes because they don't know a lot of English, and they really wish that I knew Spanish, like that my mom taught me Spanish because she didn't, and so they try to just speak to me in Spanish and like expect for me to know what they're saying, and that's really like frustrating sometimes because I'm like, I really can't understand you, but they're like, come on, like you got it, and I'm like, no, I don't. Like, so I kind of have that experience. Yeah, exactly, like full immersion, which is hard. But besides that, I've done Compass Campus too, and I worked at Lummi Nation, and so a lot of the students there, their English wasn't super advanced, but they all were like really willing to work on their English, and so I feel like it wasn't that big of a challenge, but there were still times where like I had to work with them and try and figure out like what they were saying and whatnot. And then one of my things I mentioned was that I lived next to a Hispanic family growing up, and they had kids that they would like just kind of like make me watch. Like, I'd be outside, so they'd let their kids out, and I would just be like, they'd be like, oh, you're outside, like, you can watch our kids. But they only Spanish, and so I was trying to communicate with them a lot, and that was hard just because they didn't know any English words. And so I feel like most of the time working with ELL students hasn't really been teaching them, but almost like them teaching me how to like understand what they're saying and just kind of like try and jump into it. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
In our elementary education, I forget. Or are you secondary?
Yeah, secondary English.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So would you consider, being in that role where you feel more like the ELL? How did you feel when you were in that role? Like, was it nerve-wracking a little bit, or?
I feel like the best way to describe it was just like frustrating, because like I wanted to communicate with them, with my family or my neighbors. Like, I want to communicate really bad, but sometimes I feel like there's not much I can do. And so it's nice to try and see it from like the other, like from an ELL perspective, just because I feel like as a teacher, you would think like I'm the one that's frustrated because like my student's not understanding, but like just kind of seeing like how much harder it is for them because everyone around them is like speaking the same language and they're the one that like is having a hard time understanding.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool to see it from like a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And then for this course, I know we're working probably in Mexico a lot with like younger students, but are you like excited to work with older ELLs? I've never experienced like secondary ELLs before. So is that something that you're just like interested in or have any experience?
I'm really interested in mostly because I feel like, so I took 431 and 432 last like spring quarter, and I feel like it's mostly geared towards elementary ed. And so I had a hard time trying to apply it to like what I'm going into, because a lot of it was talking about students who like have just come to America that are still learning their own language. And so I'm excited to work with secondary to see how I can like really apply the knowledge that I've learned so far and like see, because obviously like they talk about like long-term ELLs and like short-term ELLs. And so it'll be interesting to work with students who are long-term ELLs that are still kind of struggling even when they're like at an older age.
So the ELL endorsement certifies P through 12. Would you ever be interested in working at the elementary level?
No.
No?
I don't think so. No.
Probably just high school.
No, yeah. I especially because I'm going into the MIT program in the fall, and it's specifically high school, and I can get a middle school endorsement, but I won't have a certification to work with elementary ed.
Gotcha.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, look at us with our aspirations here. Cool. Is there anything else anyone wants to add before we say goodbye?
I think that's it.
Okay, cool.
Not for this one.
Not for this one. All right, then. Bye, Jen.
Bye, Jen.
See you later.
Bye.